Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to this round of the Supreme Debates 2023. We will be witnessing the talents and skills of the speakers and researchers in debating from both the affirmative and the negative sides. Once again, welcome to this afternoon's debate with the proposition, resolved that the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms be legalized. Allow me to introduce to you the members of the two teams. From the affirmative side, the speakers are Gabriel Ramos, Gwen Apostol, Maxi Jean Alimudian, and Sanara Alarcon. Other members of the team are the researchers, and they are Franz Velarde, Ira Venice Calapardo, Brant Adaniel, Isabella Julosa, Magjay Aribal, and Jade Valdeverona. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the affirmative side. Now, let's have the opposing team, the negative side. The speakers are Faye Elise Salmorin, James Carvajal, William Gel Alarcon, and Joanne Lane Judos. The researchers are the following: Alam Jan Trompeta, Renzo Arenea, and Dana Julia Maloco. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. These are the members of the negative side. Once again, our proposition is resolved that the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms be legalized. To refresh our audience, the first speakers will be discussing about the necessity of the proposition. The second speakers will be discussing about the beneficiality of the proposition. The third speakers will be discussing about the practicability of the proposition, and the final speakers will be our rebuttalists. Speakers are given 5 minutes to deliver their constructive speeches and rebuttals. The interpolation is to last for 3 minutes. At this juncture, may I now call on the first speaker of the affirmative team to present the necessity of the proposition. You may speak when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator, all adjudicators, and everyone present today. As the first affirmative speaker, I am tasked to read the following definition of terms and the parameters. First, the definition of terms. Cross-gender. One's identity as female or male opposite to their sex assigned at birth. Those who assume the role of the opposite sex by adopting the clothes, hairstyle, and manner of speaking. Next, cross-gender uniform. A set of uniform intended to be worn by a person whose gender is opposite or different to the sex, male or female. The uniform is prescribed for. Next, legalize. To allow something by law. To create a law that will allow LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms. Next, LGBTQ plus, an abbreviation for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus others. Next, uniform, the distinctive clothing worn by students at certain schools. Next are the following parameters. Number 1, a student who shall wear cross-gender uniform refer to a student of any gender who opts to wear uniform not intended for his or her sexuality assigned at birth. Number 2, wearing cross-gender uniform must be dealt with absolute decency. Number 3, Cross-dressing is the act of wearing clothes traditionally or stereotypically associated with a different gender, either by intent or as to adoption of a new gender role, and should not be interpreted or equated to cross-gender. Number 4, limited to school setting only and applicable in both elementary and high school educational system of public and private schools of the Philippines. That would be all for the definition of definition of terms and the parameters. I will now start my speech. Legalizing cross-gender uniform is necessary to have a clear stance from the state or the government. Legalizing cross-gender uniform will provide a clear rights to students for them to express their gender identity freely. Discrimination against LGBTQ students, including issues related to cross-dressing and school uniforms, is a serious problem that can have a significant impact on students' well-being and academic performance. Such discrimination can take many forms, including harassment, bullying, and exclusion from schools' activities. And this discrimination is existing in our country for a long time now and never stopped when it started. In some cases, LGBTQ students who wish to express their gender identity by cross-dressing or wearing non-traditional clothing may face disciplinary action from school authorities or even expulsion. This kind of discrimination is unacceptable and violates the rights of students to express themselves freely. In 2015, a transgender student in a Catholic school in Quezon City was barred from wearing a female uniform and was forced to cut her hair short. The school cited its policy that required students to wear uniforms based on their biological sex. The student and her mother filed a complaint with the Department of Education and the Commission on Human Rights, alleging discrimination and violation of their rights. The DepEd later issued a memorandum that allowed students to choose their uniform based on their gender identity. But is this enough as an assurance to all students who want to express their gender identity through uniforms? There are no federal laws requiring that a school permit cross-gender dressing. But this also means that there are no laws stating that students are allowed to cross-dress on uniforms. This is clearly a negligence coming from our government, as they have no clear stance about the cross-gender uniform in school institutions. This provides an uncertainty to those who want to cross-dress in school through uniforms to express their gender identity, as they have no reliable support coming from a behemoth existence such as government. Schools should ensure that their dress codes are inclusive and do not discriminate against any particular groups of students. Dress codes should be based on practical considerations and such as safety and comfort, rather than on gender stereotypes or other forms of bias. By allowing students to wear clothing that aligns with their gender identity, schools can create a more welcoming and accepting environment for LGBTQ students. This can help to reduce feelings of isolation and improve mental health outcomes, which in turn can have a positive impact on academic performance. Moreover, cross-gender uniform policies can help to reduce discrimination and harassment against LGBTQ students. When the state have clear policies in place that explicitly allow students to cross-dress to freely express their gender identity or sexual orientation, students are more likely to feel safe and supported. We also have another option where we can create a new design of uniform where it won't show or present any sexuality. Instead, it will be a uniform for all. This design of uniform can also include characteristics that will show equality, diversity, and unity. In addition, this will benefit all students as it will be cost efficient in a way where the uniform will be the only uniform needed to attend the school. Parents won't have problems about the quality of certain clothes and its compatibility on their children that makes the picking of clothes more pricey. This also provides a certain availability, as this will be the only uniform students need in school. We are all under the country of Philippines. Let us represent the whole country and not the different kinds of sexuality. By legalizing cross-gender uniform, we will be able to move bolder towards the equality that the schools should have. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mic test. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First speaker of the non-necessity from the negative side, you may now begin your interpellation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Speaker, for my first question, are you aware that there is no law or provision in the Constitution that forbids students from wearing school uniforms? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, I would like to request for
All
the
right, Mr. Speaker, for my first question,
to please lower her voice and her microphone be kept
irrelevant, Mr. Speaker. I appeal that his statement is irrelevant. Mr. Speaker, for my first question, are you aware that there is no such law or provision in the Constitution that forbids students from wearing school uniforms, yes or no? I believe, Mr. Moderator, that it is a tactic of Mr. Speaker to delay my time for...
Palayo, I can discuss.
Proceeding to my second question, are you aware that the use of gender cross uniform is not currently prohibited by law? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, I cannot
Yes or no,
answer
Mr.
Ms.
Speaker? I am asking you a very simple question. Therefore you should answer a yes or no.
Mr. Chair, I cannot answer Ms. Speaker's question as I can clearly understand her speaking as the mic was too close to his...
Are you aware that the use of double crossing is not currently prohibited by law? Yes. So you agree, Mr. Speaker? Are you saying that wearing gender crossing uniform is legal in today's status quo?
No!
Proceeding to my second question, Mr. Speaker, an LGBTQ student in any clothing would freely express themselves, such as through ways like speech and gesture. Mr. Speaker, an LGBTQ plus student in any clothing would freely express themselves through ways like speech and gesture.
Yes.
Thus, Mr. Moderator, even that our LGBTQ plus students can wear and be recognized by their peers and have complete freedom in speech and gesture, I do not see a compelling argument for legalizing of wearing a cross-gender uniform, thus it is not necessary. On your first argument, you have brought the topic about academic performance, right?
Yes.
So does legalizing cross-gender uniform could affect the students' performance?
Yes.
What are your bases? Therefore, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Speaker has no basis for this claim. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We, on the negative side, disagree. I got the unfair.
Oh. Luck is on my side.
Okay. First speaker
Mic
on the
test.
negative side, you may now begin your constructive speech.
Mr. Chair, Board of Educators, members of both debating teams, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, good afternoon. We, on the negative side, disagrees to the notion of the proposition that the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear gender-cross uniforms be legalized. Why legalize something that is already legal? For our first argument, there is currently no DepEd directive that forbids students from dressing however they like, nor is there a state law that mandates the usage of school uniforms. So it is not necessary to enforce a legislation regarding LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms in the effort to have them legalized. It is therefore irrelevant. As per DepEd Order Number 065, Article 2, issued in 2010, it is stated that wearing of school uniform shall not be required in public schools. And through this order, schools could not curtail students' freedom of expression as long as students' choices were not disruptive and did not impinge upon the rights of others. And if we are to argue that schools are still mandating us to wear uniforms, I would like to reiterate that school uniforms are only encouraged but not mandated on the grounds of any existing law or order. Hence, the mere idea of having the legalization of cross-gender uniform is absolutely meaningless because, first of all, there's no law that prohibits it. For our second argument, legalizing cross-gender uniform is not on top of the list among the ways to support LGBTQ plus students. The resolution of criminal cases involving LGBTQ plus students should be the main focus. These are as follows. Schools should focus more on promoting existing strategies to support not only the LGBTQ plus students, but all its citizenry to further improve safety and create a more inclusive environment. Promoting and strengthening the anti-bullying program on school campus is one of the existing strategies to support LGBTQ plus students. Sexual orientation and gender identity are included as prohibited grounds for bullying in the implementing rules and regulation of the anti-bullying law approved in Congress in 2013. We also have the gender-responsive basic education policy, which recognizes that the concept of gender includes relations between women and those between men. The policy further recognizes the concepts of gender awareness, gender-based violence, gender-based discrimination, gender expression, and gender identity, among others. Aside from that, the Republic Act Number 11313, or the Safe Space Act, or the Bawal Bastos Law, is an act defining gender-based sexual harassments in streets, public spaces, online, workplaces, and educational or training institutions, providing protective measures and prescribing penalties therefore. In conclusion, there are no legal basis that outlaw students from wearing cross-gender uniforms. The wearing of school uniforms in educational institutions is not mandated, but rather encouraged. And lastly, there are a number of existing laws that serve to protect all individuals of all genders, including LGBTQ plus members. Therefore, legalizing cross-gender uniform is not on top of the list among the ways to support LGBTQ plus students. The notion of the proposition is therefore not necessary. That will be all. I am now ready for interpolation.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. First speaker of the affirmative side, you may now begin your interpellation.
Ms. Speaker, in your speech, you have stated that cross-gender uniform is not a top means to support LGBTQ students. Is that right?
Yes.
Then why do you think LGBTQ students cross-dress? Isn't it to express their gender identity? Or are you saying that they expressing themselves not a top priority?
As I have said in my first argument, there are no laws that prohibits the wearing of cross-gender uniforms. Therefore, it is not necessary for it to be legalized.
There are no laws prohibits them, but there are no also laws allows them.
Mr. Speaker.
And that's where the fear of them comes to cross-dress, as there are no assurance for their safety and there are no punishment for those who wants to discriminate them in the school.
As I
Because
have-
there are no stance of the government.
As I have said in my second argument, Mr. Speaker, I have elaborated a plethora of laws and debit orders that protect them. And these are the anti-bullying law, the gender-responsive basic education policy, the Republic Act 11313, which aims to protect all genders, especially those of LGBTQ plus members. Mr. Speaker, you are not listening to my speech.
Then are this enough, Ms. Speaker? Aren't we seeing a lot of cases of discrimination today? Aren't the policies that you have stated enough to protect them? Isn't legalizing this cross-dressing will allow for more safety?
Strengthening the existing laws and order, Mr. Speaker, could definitely solve our problems. That includes the discrimination of all LGBTQ plus members and all genders of our society.
Okay, Ms. Speaker, I heard enough. Please stop. So now I will now proceed to my next question, Ms. Speaker. If a student wants to wear cross-gender uniform, knowing that he or she can be discriminated, does that change the fact that cross-dressing is not acceptable?
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask Mr. Speaker to please repeat his
Okay,
question.
Ms. Speaker, I will now repeat my question. If a student wants to wear cross-gender uniform, knowing that he or she can be discriminated, does it change the fact that cross-dressing is not acceptable?
As I have said in my speech, Mr. Speaker, highlighted in my speech, that cross-gender uniform
Mr.
is
Chair, I would like to
very
request for
acceptable
Ms.
in
Speaker
this
to
very
answer a yes or
status quo.
no.
As I have said,
Thank you to our necessity and non-necessity speakers from the affirmative and the negative sides. At this moment, we will now be hearing the constructive speech of the beneficiality speaker from the affirmative side. May I now call on the beneficiality speaker of the affirmative side. Again, may I call on the second speaker from the affirmative side. Gentlemen, the second speaker of the affirmative side.
Mic test. Mic test. To our moderator, Board of Educators, fellow debaters, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We, the affirmative side, presents the benefits of legalizing the rights of LGBTQA+ students to wear cross-gender uniforms. First and foremost, people who cross-dress in uniforms often do as a way of aligning their gender identity with their clothing choices. It is important to recognize that cross-dressing in uniforms is a form of self-expression and identity exploration. The existing DepEd Order 065 states that school uniform is not mandatory to wear, but majority of schools in the Philippines implements wearing of uniform. These benefits the uniformity, identity, equality of status in the society of every individual, not only the LGBTQA+ community. Therefore, even uniform is not mandatory, it is a crucial matter to be discussed. Legalizing cross-dressing in uniform is entirely feasible. The Department of Education implemented a DepEd Order number 32 series of 2017 entitled Gender Responsive Basic Education Policy provides the gender responsive basic education that shall allow the department of integrate the principles of gender equality, gender equity, gender sensitivity, non-discrimination, and human rights in the provision and governance of basic education. Countries that implement and legalize wearing of cross-gender uniforms are Japan, UK, Sweden, and in 2019, India. The legalization will strengthen the equality as such every gender on the gender spectrum can freely express themselves with lesser fear that they can be a potential target for bullying as they are already expressing who they are. Mr. Chair, as documented in the new Human Rights Watch report, students in the Philippines where many secondary schools impose rigidly gendered uniform and hair length restrictions on students according to sex they were assigned at birth. Nominally, for school discipline or pride, are being stripped away from their freedom of self-expression. Bullying, harassment, and exclusion of LGBT people in educational institutions is a worldwide problem faced by significant proportion of LGBT students. It is often driven by stigma and prejudice rooted in deep cultural beliefs about gender roles, masculinity, and femininity. For students who feel restricted to what they wear without comfort on their mind, their mental capacity to digest certain topics will be vulnerable to internal hindrances such as low self-esteem and low confidence to oneself that may affect their academic performance. By utilizing the cross-gender uniform, this reduces the focus on appearance, in which by removing the emphasis on gendered clothing, individuals can focus more on their work or studies instead of worrying about their appearance. These can lead to a more productive and focused environment. In conclusion, legalizing this will benefit the LGBTQA+ community in terms of their mental health and also the future. Equality of opportunity for sexual and gender minorities. We can pave the way for a better future. I rest my case.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. Second speaker of the negative side, you may now begin your interpellation of the second speaker of the affirmative side.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. I will now start my interpellation. On your first argument, you have stated that uniform show uniformity of students in schools not minding their social status or other factors that causes inequality. Yes or no?
Yes.
If cross-gender uniforms were legalized, will this cause imbalance in schools?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of the DepEd OUGFO number 2022-02-0153 memorandum?
No.
Therefore, Mr. Moderator, the Ms. Speaker is not yet well informed. Does your proposition only focuses on the self-expression aspect as its benefits?
No.
So do you agree that the resolution bears no benefits but rather provide an easy access for LGBTQIA+ students to experience inequality such as harassment and violence?
No, but in my
Since you have disagreed with my third question, will this benefits that you have assumed tackle?
as I have said, I said that LGBT community or LGBT individuals.
Since you have disagreed on my first
Mr.
question, Mr. Moderator, I would like to proceed to my next question. Since you have disagreed to my third question, will these benefits that you have assumed tackle the main root of the problem? Yes or no?
As I want to reiterate what
Mr.
I said.
Speaker, I would only accept a yes or no answer.
Can you please paraphrase your question, please?
Since you have disagreed on my third question, will these benefits that you have assumed tackles the main root of the problem? Yes or no?
No.
Since you have disagreed on my question, there are existing laws such as gender-responsive basic education policy provides legal basis for freely expressing oneself. Do you agree that this proposition is absurd? Yes or no?
Can you please repeat your question and make it shorter, please?
Existing laws such as gender-responsive basic education already exist.
Mr. Moderator, I can ask him to be clearer. His mic is.
Okay. Existing laws such as gender-responsive basic education policy is already a legal basis that exists. So, do you agree that this proposition is absurd?
Can you please repeat your question? A very short one. Are you assuming?
Mr. Moderator, I think Mr. Speaker is using a delaying tactic.
Yes.
Okay. So again, last laws.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You may now proceed to your constructive speech.
Board of Educators, Mr. Moderator, observers, debaters of both affirmative and negative teams, good afternoon. I, beneficiality speaker of the negative team, shall now present my arguments on why the resolution on the rights of the LGBTQIA students to wear cross-gender uniforms should not be legalized. Under the DepEd Order Number 065 Series of 2010, it states that the wearing of uniforms shall not be required in public schools. Students with existing uniforms may continue using these uniforms if so they desire to avoid incurring additional costs for new attire. I would like to clarify that the implementation of uniforms is encouraged but not mandated by any law. Rather, it was institutionalized with reference to the DepEd guidelines in the development of Learner's Discipline Manual that provides the standard guidelines for uniforms and proper haircut. However, these guidelines for the implementation of uniforms and standard haircut for boys were weakened after the release of DepEd OUGFO number 2022-02-0153 Memorandum, the reiteration of DepEd Order Number 32, Series of 2012, titled Gender Responsive Basic Education Policy, that allows the department to integrate the principles of gender equality, equity, sensitivity, non-discrimination, and human rights in the provision and governance of basic education. Therefore, legalizing this resolution bears no benefits since the freedom of expression that this resolution was trying to attain was successfully achieved by the existing DepEd order that was strengthened by its provisions and amendments. The Philippines is considered as gay-friendly country. However, it is reported that Filipino, lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual community or LGBTQ community, especially students, are struggling with bullying and discrimination from families, schools, and particularly schools. According to the statistics from Equaldex, a website that collects, displays, and analyzes data about LGBT laws, facts, polls, and opinions globally by region or by country, the concept of LGBTQIA+ rights and homosexuality in the Philippines is accepted or is acknowledged but not guaranteed. While according to the statistics of Rappler in 2018, 61% of the Philippine population is against the LGBTQIA+ community. The idea of cross-gender uniforms in the Philippines is unpopular, which may be subjected to discrimination, bullying, harassment, stereotypes, violence, and other forms of maltreatment. The Philippines is currently testing the waters with regards to the acceptance of LGBTQIA+ community where conservatism, an idea that surrounds Philippine society up to this date, is an affecting factor. The introduction of cross-gender uniforms is not that easy to accept, especially that this proposition aims to be implemented not only to secondary schools, but to elementary schools as well. In 2018, according to a survey facilitated by the Program for International Students Assessment, or PISA, 6 out of 10 Filipinos reported that they were being bullied. The legalization of the said proposition is absurd, and it is not a mean to support the LGBTQIA students. So instead of proposing a resolution with the same benefits with our existing laws, we should strengthen our existing laws or DepEd order, such as DepEd Order number 40, series of 2012, or the DepEd Child Protection Policy, RA 10627, or the Anti-Bullying Act of 2013, and Republic Act number 11313, or the Safe Spaces Act, or Bawal Bastos Law, that covers all forms of gender-based sexual harassment committed in public spaces, educational and training institutions, workplace, and online space. To sum it up, this proposition bears no benefits, but rather may inflict harm, bullying, discrimination among students. The negative theme stands its ground that this proposition should not be legalized. I rest my case.
Thank you. Second speaker of the negative side. Second speaker of the affirmative side, you may now begin your interpellation.
Mr. Speaker, as you have said, there are many laws that protect the children or the community or the students in school. But these policies, while strong on paper, have not been adequately enforced in the absence of effective implementation and monitoring. Many LGBT continue to experience bullying and harassment in school. Are you agreeing with it, or are you aware of it? Yes or no?
Yes, I am aware.
Do you agree then? Do you agree that schools follow conservation in designing their designed uniforms?
Mr. Moderator, I would like Ms. Speaker to please repeat your question.
Do you agree that schools follow conservatism on designing their designated uniforms, such as skirts or either below or knee length?
Mr. Moderator, I would like her to please paraphrase her question since it is not received properly.
Do you see the uniform of individuals, or are you do you agree that schools follow conservatism, such as skirts are either below or knee length, on designing their designated uniforms?
Mr. Moderator, the question is out of context, therefore it is irrelevant.
Why is it irrelevant?
It is irrelevant since I am focusing on the conservatism of not only the school, but the Philippine society. You are only focusing your question to the schools, which is not, or it is absurd.
I think that is in the parameter about the totality of the uniform.
Ms. Speaker, could you repeat please?
The totality of uniform.
You think that what, Mr. Speaker?
The totality of uniform, Mr. Speaker. That is outside the parameter.
Could you please repeat your question?
I am asking you, Mr. Speaker, do you agree that schools follow conservatism on designing their designated uniforms? I give you examples: skirts or either below or knee length.
Is your question answerable by yes or
I'm going
no?
to proceed to the next question. I reiterate what I just have said, that even though the Department of Education implemented the DepEd Order 065, majority of the schools still implements, majority of the schools in the Philippines still implies uniforms. So, wearing of uniform is visible.
Mr. Moderator, her question is too long. Can she paraphrase it?
I'll repeat my question, Mr. Speaker, as you have not
Mr. Moderator, I
listening
am
to me.
asking for her to paraphrase.
I will paraphrase my question, Mr. Speaker. The Department of Education
Thank you so much, speakers. Second speakers of both the affirmative and the negative sides. The third speaker of the affirmative side is now requested to give her constructive speech.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. The Philippines is home to plenty of highly diverse lifestyles that give its citizens color and vibrance. When gender enters the topic, it becomes more than just blue and pink, more than just trousers and skirts, and more than just a two-way system. Today, gender plays a vital role in developing young minds, and more voices are being heard. Societal norms begins to be challenged. For instance, where the youth begins their journey, their learning grounds. According to a social and behavioral scientist focused on the experiences of queer Filipinos, clothing and haircut help people present a version of themselves they are comfortable in, and this is even more significant for transgender people. Upon legalizing the cross-gender uniforms in schools, these are just a few main points showing the practicality if ever it is legalized. Based from the research of Philippine Statistics Authority showing that in the first semester of the 2021, poverty incidence among population or the proportion of poor Filipinos whose per capita income is not sufficient to meet their basic food and non-food needs was estimated at 23.7%. By legalizing the cross-gender uniform policy, Filipino families can save from uniform allowance due to the fact that their children, regardless of sex, can use the same uniforms as their older siblings. Point 2. Even with the existing laws and policies that protect the students from discrimination, it is still apparent discrimination against students who openly shows their gender are often stigmatized and bullied. Being able to dress and represent their gender in connection to how they act and how they speak will clear any misconception and misunderstanding to their peers, and over time, it will eventually be a norm. Point number 3, religion will not be overlooked. Upon legalizing the side policy, religion will be one of the foundations that will help cross-gender uniforms have or be in place with Philippine culture, and that is conservatism. It will ensure that school uniforms will not be vulgar and still be able to abide the customs of our culture. Religion will not be a hindrance, but instead be a tool for a greater commendatory use in the LGBT spectrum. And with these reasons, I conclude that legalizing the cross-gender uniforms is indeed practicable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. The third speaker of the negative side is now requested for interpellation of the third speaker of the affirmative side.
Ms. Speaker, I will start my interpellation. Ms. Speaker, you mentioned in your second point about the existing laws and policies. Are you aware of the non-discrimination bill? Yes or no? Yes? Since you agreed, Ms. Speaker, do you think, Ms. Speaker, is cross-gender uniform much worthy of legalizing than the non-discrimination bill? Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, can Ms. Speaker repeat her question?
Do you think, Ms. Speaker, is cross-gender uniform much worthy of legalizing than the non-discrimination bill?
As you said, there is already an anti-discrimination
I'm
bill,
only asking
so
for a
yes.
yes or no. Yes is your answer, Ms. Speaker. Then are you saying that legalizing this result won't cause any discrimination?
Yes.
Therefore, are you saying that Philippines is already a gender-friendly country?
Yes, it is stated in the statistics and the research.
Then, Ms. Speaker, you mentioned in your third point about the religion. And my question is, are you aware that Philippines is a Christian nation? Yes or no?
Yes.
Then do you think that this can affect the practicability of this result?
Can you repeat the question?
Then do you think, Ms. Speaker, that this can affect the practicability of this result?
No.
So are you saying that religion involved in this result?
Religion has the right to be involved, and it can
Okay,
serve
thank
as a
you, Ms.
foundation.
Speaker. Do you agree that legalizing cross-gender uniform will help students to express their identity and feelings?
Yes.
If so, are you saying that when we legislate something, we base it on how we feel?
Can you paraphrase the question, please?
Are you saying, Ms. Speaker, that when we legislate something, we base it on how we feel?
In a way, yes.
If so, do you conclude that legalizing is based on how we feel, Ms. Speaker?
Can you repeat the question?
Since you agreed, do you conclude that legalizing a law is based on our feelings?
It is not only based in the feelings, but also
But you
based in
agreed, Ms.
needs.
Speaker? Yes or no, Ms. Speaker?
Mr.
I will
Chair,
proceed to my next question, Mr. Chair, because it seems like Ms. Speaker doesn't know the answer. Do you agree that schools should focus first?
Ms. Speaker, time is up. You may now proceed to your constructive speech.
To our moderator, Mr. Chair, Board of Adjudicators, fellow debaters, and to the audience, good afternoon. The cross-gender uniform in school should not be legalized because of the following practicable arguments. For the first argument, legalizing cross-gender uniform can affect the safety of the students. According to a national school climate survey by the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, 89.5% of transgender students report feeling unsafe in their school. And statistics indicate that transgender students are at higher risk for dropping out. The LGBTQ plus students give an account of feeling particularly unsafe in restrooms, locker rooms, and lunchrooms. And any discussion regarding school dress code policies should take all of these issues into account by putting more attention to bullying, discrimination, and harassment. If this resolve only seeks for that protection for people who are discriminated upon, then pass a law that will protect and keep the safety of all people from discrimination. We have the Bill of Rights in the 1987 Constitution, or the Non-Discrimination Bill. We have the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, the Safe Spaces Act, and many bills and acts that's worth of legalizing. Discrimination is everywhere, regardless of gender and sexuality. This law is for all, not just for a certain group of people. Ladies and gentlemen, this will lead us to the second argument. Aside from being unsafe, it is also not practicable in a way that the rights of the Catholic, Islam, and other religious institutions will be affected. Philippines is a Christian nation, very religious. According to Catholic Bishop Conference of the Philippines, there are about 1,300 Catholic schools spread all over Philippines, not including the other religious schools. This will become unequal to their side since they have their own policy and regulations to follow. So it's on the student's choice whether they want to enroll in that institution or not, knowing full well that they have that kind of policy and regulation. It's a different story when the school policy changes because of someone's identity. Lastly, we have implemented laws and Republic Acts that needs more attention in school, such as the Anti-Bullying Law of 2013, which was enacted to protect students from bullying and other forms of violence that may be inflicted upon them. Another one is the Republic Act number 7877, Section 2, which states that all members of the society shall value the dignity of every individual, enhance the development of its human resources, guarantee fellow respect for human rights, and uphold the dignity of workers, employees, applicants for employment, students, or discrimination. Towards this end, all forms of sexual harassment in the employment, education, or training environment are hereby declared unlawful. Therefore, is what our necessity speaker said, legalizing the cross-gender uniform is not necessary at all. If we already have these existing laws and rights, which does not only support and protect the average students, but also the LGBTQ plus students, why not strengthen this first? There are already existing laws that protects against inequality, discrimination, and bullying, including name-calling, harassment, and abuse. Fight for these basic laws, not just for gender, but for all humankind. So instead of legalizing this resolve, why not strengthen the upper-mentioned laws to give the LGBTQ plus community the right, protection, and the equality that they want? This resolve raises not just emotions, but freedom, norms, faith, principles, and even facts of common sensibility. And all of this will be forced to change if cross-gender uniform is to be legalized. We already have enough law to protect every humankind. We just have to apply it properly. With that, I rest my case and I am now ready for interpellation.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. Third speaker of the affirmative side, you may now begin your interpellation.
Ms. Speaker, are you aware that even with the anti-bullying law, that there are still LGBT students that experience bullying, harassment, and discrimination in school? Yes or no?
Yes, Ms. Speaker.
So do you agree with me that the existing laws are still not enough to protect the minority or the marginalized sector of bullying, harassment, and discrimination? Yes
Mr.
or no?
Chair, I would like to appeal that I did not mention any word such as minority in my speech.
Mr. Speaker, the LGBTQ are considered as the minority, so this is relevant. Answer my question. Do you agree with me
Mr. Chair,
that the existing laws are still not enough to
like to
protect the
request-
minority or the marginalized sector of bullying, harassment,
Mr.
and
Chair, I would like to
discrimination?
request
Yes or no? Please answer yes or no. Yes or no, Ms. Speaker?
Phrase of your question.
Your Honor, since she is stalling my time, I will proceed to the next question. Ms. Speaker, are you aware that the Catholic schools and other religious institutions are now opening to the idea of gender-neutral uniforms? Yes or no?
Yes, Ms. Speaker, I am
So do
aware.
you agree that religion and faith would not be set aside with a cross-gender uniform policy? Yes or no? Yes or
Mr. Chair, I
no?
would like to request to please repeat her question, please.
So do you agree that religion would not be set aside with the cross-gender uniform policy? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, as I
Ms.
mentioned,
Speaker, even with the mandated DepEd memorandum that states that uniforms are not mandatory, are you aware that school policies exist? Yes or no?
yes,
But Ms. Speaker, are you aware that most schools, like for example Balasan National High School, implores their students to wear sex-based uniforms? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, we are only about
answer.
legalizing the uniform, and we are already.
I am just asking if she is aware, Your Honor.
Mr. Chair, I would like to appeal that I would not answer her question because we are only talking about the uniform.
Ms. Speaker, do you agree that the LGBT community is the minority and are the marginalized sector? Yes or no?
No, Ms. Speaker, I do not agree.
Ms. Speaker, do you know what does marginalized mean then? What does marginalized mean? Do you know it or not? Yes or no? Please, my time
Mr.
is
Chair, I
running,
would
Ms.
like to
Speaker.
request to please rephrase your question because it is not as out of
Ms.
context.
Speaker,
Ms. Speaker.
my question is a simple question, Your Honor. So, do you know what marginalized does mean, right?
Ms. Speaker, your question is out of context.
So,
we are
I'll
only
just
talking
proceed to
about
the next
legalizing
question.
the
Ms.
uniform.
Speaker, can you state what site did you get your data from your statements and what year was it published? Yes or no?
Yes, Ms. Speaker.
Can you elaborate? Can you give me the sites?
In my basis,
Time is up, Ms. Speaker. Thank you very much. Third speakers of both the negative and the affirmative sides. At this moment, we will now be hearing the... Before we proceed to the rebuttals from the negative and affirmative sides, all debaters are given a 5-minute break. Ready.
To our moderator, board of adjudicators, our worthy opponents, fellow debaters, and to the audience, good afternoon. First, I will discuss to you the loopholes and fallacies that we have observed from the opposing team. The first speaker of the affirmative side presented sufficient logical evidence that strongly indicates that his conclusion is true, but he failed to acknowledge it. Instead, he attributed the outcome to coincidence or something unrelated. He also jumped to his conclusions about the validity of the proposition with inadequate evidences to back it up and overwork potential counter-arguments. Therefore, he committed fallacies which are slothful, induction fallacy, and hasty generalization. The second speaker of the affirmative side stated that countries like Japan, Sweden, UK, and India already legalized the proposition as support for gender minorities, and this resulted to a lot of positive outcomes. However, studies in other countries are irrelevant to our culture here in the Philippines, and truth to one is not truth to many. Therefore, the said speaker committed a fallacy of composition. For the third speaker, she claimed one of her arguments with an evidence from a questionable authority. Therefore, there is an absence of strong evidence in her argument. All the speakers on the negative side presented some of their arguments that are flawed. And one of these states that a student which is a part of the LGBTQ plus community can express themselves freely if the proposition is legalized. However, the arguers claimed these statements with no evidences presented. Therefore, these arguments they presented are not based from facts and are assumptions. Moreover, some of the speakers of the affirmative side during the interpellation refused to believe the arguments presented by the speakers of our team, ignoring any evidence given. Therefore, invincible ignorance is present on the negative side. Now, I am going to present the summarized arguments of our team that the affirmative side failed to destroy. From our necessity speaker, all her arguments hasn't been destroyed by the opposing team. Therefore, the proposition to be legalized is not necessary. From our beneficiality speaker, his first argument states that there are no benefits since the freedom of expression that this resolution was trying to attain was successfully achieved by the existing DepEd Order number 065 series of 2010 that was strengthened by its provision and amendments. His second argument states that the idea of cross-gender uniforms in the Philippines is unpopular, which may be subjected to discrimination, bullying, harassment, stereotypes, violence, and other forms of maltreatments. Therefore, it is not beneficial. And lastly, from our practicability speaker, her first argument states that it can affect the safety of the students. While her third argument states that we already have existing laws and rights, which does not only support and protect the average students, but also the LGBTQ plus community. So instead of legalizing the action, why not strengthen these laws? Therefore, it is not practical. Once again, our team's essential point is that we disagree with legalizing the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms due to the statements that we have made. All the points were addressed and successfully proven our point. With all the statements, facts, data, proof, and pieces of evidences, I am certain that we, from the negative team, successfully challenged the definition that was defined by the affirmative side and contradicted the status quo, citing its non-necessity, non-beneficiality, and non-practicability. Therefore, on behalf of the negative team, standing firm with our conclusion, contradicting the proposition and declaring with full confidence that we, the negative side, successfully achieved victory over this debate.
Thank you so much, rebuttalist from the negative side. We will now hear the rebuttalist from the affirmative side.
To our moderator, board of adjudicators, fellow debaters, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I stand before you today in support of the proposition that the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms be legalized. Our esteemed opponents have presented their arguments against this proposition, but I am here to show you that their arguments are flawed. In the first speaker's argument, she is prioritizing uniformity over individual expression. This ignores the facts that students are individuals with unique identities and experiences. Allowing them to express themselves through their clothing choices does not necessarily undermine the sense of unity and equality that uniforms can provide. Moreover, Ms. Speaker is ignoring the scientific understanding of gender identity. She is ignoring that it is complex and deeply personal aspect of one's identity, and that individuals may experience their gender in ways that do not conform to traditional societal norms. Further, Ms. Speaker is ignoring the discrimination and harassment that LGBTQ+ students face. This ignores the fact that LGBTQ+ students often subjected to discrimination and harassment based on their gender identity or sexual orientation. By not allowing them to express themselves through their clothing choices, schools are potentially contributing to the hostile and unsafe environment for LGBTQ+ students. And of course, based on her statement, why legalize something that is already legal? Your statement is incorrect, since we are here on the proposition that cross-gender uniforms be legalized. Therefore, it is still not legal. In the second speaker's argument, he argued that allowing cross-gender uniforms will create a slippery slope towards allowing other forms of non-clothing. However, this argument is unfounded and ignores the specific needs of LGBTQ+ students. The beneficial speaker of the negative side stated that by legalizing the proposition may lead to more bullying, discrimination, and gender-based violence. However, he failed to provide basis that could prove his claim. Therefore, he committed the casual fallacy. Lastly, based on the third speaker's speech, she is limiting individual freedom. This ignores the fact that individual freedom is an important value in democratic society, and that schools should be committed to protecting the rights and dignity of all students. Ms. Speaker included religion in her argument, which affects her views regarding the school uniform. However, there is a 1987 Constitution of the Philippines that declares the separation of the church and the state. While they have made some valid points, there are certain key aspects of the affirmative stance that they failed to destroy. Firstly, the opposing side failed to address the fact that LGBTQ+ students face discrimination and harassment in school. Studies have shown that LGBTQ+ students are more likely to experience bullying, harassment, and discrimination than their non-LGBTQ+ peers. Secondly, the opposing team failed to acknowledge the importance of individual expression and promoting well-being and mental health. Allowing LGBTQ+ students to wear cross-gender uniforms can have a positive impact on their self-esteem and life satisfaction. This is particularly important given the high rates of mental health issues among LGBTQ+ youth. Lastly, our opponents have failed to recognize the importance of protecting the constitutional rights of all students. The Philippine Constitution guarantees the rights to freedom of expression, which includes the right to express oneself through clothing choices. By denying LGBTQ+ students the right to wear cross-gender uniforms, schools are violating their constitutional rights. It is important to recognize that students who identify as LGBTQ+ students face significant discrimination and harassment in schools, which can impact their mental health, academic performance, and overall well-being. Allowing these students to express themselves through their clothing choices can help create a more inclusive and accepting school environment, which can ultimately benefit all students. Additionally, allowing LGBTQ+ students to wear cross-gender uniforms does not harm anyone else. It is simply a matter of allowing individuals to express themselves in a way that feels authentic and comfortable for them. Schools should prioritize the well-being and dignity of all students, regardless of their gender identity or sexual orientation. Furthermore, gender is a social construct, and clothing is one way that individuals express their gender identity. By allowing LGBTQ+ students to wear cross-gender uniforms, schools can create a more accepting and affirming environment for all students, regardless of their gender identity or expression. In conclusion, legalizing the rights of LGBTQ+ students to wear cross-gender uniforms can help create a more inclusive and accepting school environment, promote the well-being.
Your time is up, Ms. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate all debaters from both the negative and the affirmative sides. Thank you, and in a short while, winners will be announced.
Okay.